My name is Joanne Fletcher. I am 75 years old, a retired financial advisor, and a mother who once believed she had done everything right. I thought I knew my son inside and out. I raised him alone after my husband, Mark, died in a car accident when our boy, Ryan, was just 11. Through every scraped knee, school recital, and heartbreak, I was there. Now, sitting in my quiet apartment with a warm cup of chamomile tea and a stack of photo albums, I realize how wrong I was. The faces staring back at me from those old pictures tell a story I believed in: a mother and son who stood by each other, who respected and loved without conditions. But the reality is much more complicated, especially after what happened with the house I bought for him, the house that became the setting of the most painful moment of my life. I had built my entire future around supporting my family. I was careful with money, worked long hours, and made sacrifices that only a parent can understand. I never asked for anything in return, not praise, not repayment. All I wanted was to give my son a better life. And for a while, I believed I had. But nothing prepares you for the moment when someone you love looks at you as if you're a burden. Not after everything you've given. Not after you've poured every ounce of yourself into making their life easier. This is the story of how I gave my son the keys to a dream, and how he turned that dream into a nightmare. It's about betrayal, awakening, and the strength it takes to finally put yourself first, even when your heart still wants to forgive. When Mark died, everything changed. One moment I was a wife with a steady life, the next I was a widow with an 11-year-old son and a mortgage to pay. The grief was heavy, but Ryan gave me purpose. I got my degree in finance by studying at night and working days at the local branch of First National Bank. It wasn't glamorous, but it was stable, and I was good at it. I learned how to stretch a dollar, how to build long-term wealth, and how to live without extravagance. Ryan was always sharp, but he lacked softness. He was ambitious, which I admired, but also distant in a way I couldn't quite fix. And maybe that was my fault, working all those hours, always pushing him to succeed, trying to make up for the fact that his father was gone. In high school, Ryan was the kind of kid teachers remember: driven, articulate, never one to linger after class. He went on to college, got a business degree, and landed a job in sales. That's where he met Brittany. She was beautiful in that polished, curated way: hair always perfect, makeup immaculate, voice syrupy sweet but cold underneath. She worked in interior design and sold luxury furniture to people who had no business buying it. A natural persuader. The kind of woman who could make you feel inadequate just by walking into the room. I never told Ryan how I felt about her. It wasn't my place. But from the start, she struck me as someone who saw people in terms of usefulness. When they got married, I helped them buy their first home, a modest place in a decent neighborhood. Nothing fancy, but safe and warm. Then Lily was born, my only granddaughter. Bright-eyed, curious, full of questions and laughter. She brought joy back into my life. I babysat when they asked, kept my distance when they didn't. Lily and I had our own quiet bond: Sunday muffin baking, stargazing from my little apartment balcony, whispered secrets in the grocery aisle. I thought I had found my place, not in the center of their lives, but close enough to matter. Until one day I decided to do something big, something life-changing for them. And that's when everything began to unravel. So it started with a quiet afternoon and a cup of tea by the window. I was going through my financial planner, reviewing the modest but solid portfolio I had built over the years. My pension from the bank, Social Security, low-risk investments, and a small inheritance from my sister-in-law, all of it carefully maintained. At 75, I wasn't looking to travel the world or buy luxury goods. My knees ached too much for long flights, and every piece of furniture in my apartment held meaning. So I asked myself, what was I saving for? That's when the idea came: a new home for Ryan, Brittany, and Lily. Their current house was cramped, and the neighborhood had gone downhill in recent years. Lily was growing, starting to spend more time alone. She needed her own space. I wanted her to feel safe. I wanted her to remember her childhood fondly. I didn't tell anyone, not even my best friend Elaine, who usually knew everything before I did. So this decision felt deeply personal, a quiet, private act of love. I began researching neighborhoods. Westfield Heights stood out: family-friendly, near good schools, quiet streets, wide lawns. I made an appointment with a real estate agent named Kendra Rhodes, someone Elaine had recommended. Kendra was smart, no-nonsense, and kind. "You're buying a house for your son?" she asked, surprised. "That's incredibly generous," I shrugged. "They need it more than I do." We toured several homes over the next few weekends. Some were too new, built fast and cheap. Others were charming but needed work. Finally, we found one on Ashgrove Lane, a beautiful colonial-style house with tall windows, a shaded backyard, and enough space for everyone to breathe. 4 bedrooms, a sunlit office, a cozy family room, and a kitchen that Brittany could decorate to her heart's content. It was at the top of my budget, but it felt right. The next day, I invited Ryan to lunch at a quiet bistro we both liked. I didn't drag it out. "I want to buy you a house," I said, handing him the brochure. He stared at it like I had just offered him the moon. "Mom, this is too much?" "But it's what I want," I said simply. "You're my son. Lily deserves a better childhood than a broken neighborhood can offer." He didn't say yes right away, but his eyes, they sparkled. That was answer enough. At first, Ryan was hesitant. He called it too much, said they couldn't possibly accept. But within days, the tone shifted. Brittany called me, her voice bright like polished glass. "Joanne, thank you again for even thinking of doing this. We're so excited. Ryan told me about Ashgrove Lane, it's lovely. But would you mind if we looked at a few more homes, just to compare?" Compare. That word stayed with me. I agreed, though something in my gut tightened. Kendra, ever the professional, showed us more listings. With each one, their taste grew bolder. Larger foyers, double kitchen islands, wine cellars. For entertaining, Brittany explained, even though they didn't entertain. Not really. One afternoon, after a showing in Willowbrook Estates, a gated community far beyond my budget, Brittany leaned across the table with that syrupy smile. "Didn't you say you sold stock last year?" Ryan mentioned it. "If there's more room in the budget, we could really make this our forever home." I blinked. I had, in fact, sold some shares, but I never told Ryan that. "How did he know that?" I asked. "Oh, he said you talked about it over lunch." No, I hadn't. I went home and sat with my spreadsheets for hours. Could I stretch more? Could I make it work without risking my security? The answer was yes, barely. Then we found a house on Hawthorne Ridge. It was 15% over my original budget, but stunning. Grand entryway, chef's kitchen, custom closets. Lily loved the upstairs room with a window nook. Brittany gushed about the layout. Ryan examined the garage like a man already picturing his tools neatly organized. Still, I hesitated. "I'll do it," I said finally, "but only if we follow through on full coverage insurance. This kind of property needs protecting." Ryan frowned. "Come on, Mom. That's $5,000 a year." The inspection was clean. "I still recommend it," I said. "Peace of mind matters." He looked to Brittany, who offered a tight-lipped smile. "Maybe we can revisit it later." The day we signed the papers, he kissed my cheek and said, "You're the best, Mom." But somewhere between that thank you and the party they threw to celebrate the new house, something shifted. The gratitude began to fade, the requests became expectations, and I started to wonder if the gift I gave had quietly become their entitlement. The housewarming party was Brittany's idea. "It's a new chapter," she said. "We should celebrate it right." They sent out printed invitations, hired a florist, and ordered catering from one of the best restaurants in town. 50 guests were invited, colleagues, neighbors, and even a few people I vaguely remembered from Ryan's childhood. I arrived early to help with the final touches. Brittany was already in her element, arranging flowers, directing servers, adjusting throw pillows as if the house were a showroom. Ryan stood near the back patio with a drink in hand, chatting with his boss. I barely recognized the space. New furniture, sleek and expensive. Fresh paint in trendy tones. Lily ran to greet me and dragged me upstairs to show off her new room. The telescope I'd bought her sat perfectly by the wide bay window. "Grandma, you can see the stars so clearly here," she whispered. I hugged her tightly. As the guests arrived, Ryan played the perfect host. Brittany floated through the rooms, accepting compliments on her eye for design. Every time I was introduced, it was the same. "This is my mom, she bought us the house." People gushed over my generosity, and I smiled, even as something inside me shrank. By 7, the party was in full swing, laughter spilled from every corner. I found a quiet seat in the corner of the living room, watching as the house buzzed around me. No one really noticed me anymore, not the way they had earlier. I was the giver. My part was done. Around 8, I remembered the blueberry pie I'd brought and realized I'd left the baking dish in the kitchen. I slipped away quietly, not wanting to interrupt. That's when I heard my name. She nearly cried during the toast. Brittany's voice, slightly slurred, rang out. Honestly, it was like she thought Chiffon was giving us a kidney. Laughter. Ryan's voice followed, casual. Well, she gave us most of her savings. What else is she going to do with it at her age? Another guest chimed in, chuckling. Weren't you worried she'd want to move in with you? Brittany replied, mockingly sweet. Joanne, no, she's too proud for that. And we made it clear early, we need our own space. I stood frozen, just feet from the kitchen door. I mean, Brittany continued, last thing we need is an old woman watching our every move in our own house. Something inside me cracked. My legs felt heavy, my breath shallow. I pushed open the door, and silence fell like a curtain. I forgot my dish, I said calmly, nodding toward the counter. No one spoke. Brittany turned pale. Ryan looked like a child caught stealing. As I picked up the ceramic pan, Ryan stepped forward. Mom. Don't, I said quietly. I heard everything. Brittany tried to smile. It was just a joke. No, I replied. It wasn't. I left through the front door without looking back. No one stopped me, not even my son. Outside, the night was cool. I held the dish tightly in my hands like a shield, and for the first time in my life, I truly felt alone. Not because I had no one, but because the people I loved most had made me feel like I didn't belong. And that was worse than being alone. That night stretched on like a winter with no end. I didn't turn on the television. I didn't touch the pie. I sat in the dark with the ceramic dish still in my lap, listening to the silence of my apartment press in from every corner. I wasn't angry, not yet. I was something worse, hollow. I kept thinking of Ryan as a boy, the way he used to curl up beside me on the couch when he had nightmares, the way he clutched my hand at his father's funeral, not letting go for hours. Was that version of him gone, or had I just imagined it? The phone rang around 10 the next morning. It was Lily. Grandma. Her voice was quiet, cautious. Are you okay? Something happened at the party. Mom and Dad won't tell me, but I know something's wrong. I closed my eyes, holding back the tears. I'm okay, sweetheart. I just needed to go home early. I love you, she said. And I'll always love you. It cracked something open in me. The tears came, this time in quiet streams instead of a flood. I love you too, Lily, so much. After we hung up, I took a shower, put on fresh clothes, and opened the windows to let the light in. Then I walked to the park and sat on our usual bench by the duck pond. I didn't cry anymore. I just sat there, breathing. That's where I met Walter. He was leaning on a cane, wearing a sun hat too big for his head. Do you mind if I sit? He asked. I nodded. Go ahead. He lowered himself onto the bench and looked straight ahead. Hard day? I smiled, faintly. The hardest. Well, he said, then the only direction left is forward. I didn't know it yet, but he was right. A week passed. I heard nothing from Ryan. No apology, no visit, just silence. Part of me hoped he would come around. Another part, perhaps the wiser part, knew better. Then, early one morning, my phone rang. I picked it up without checking the screen. Mom. Ryan's voice was rushed, breathless. I need your help. I paused. What happened? It's the house, he said. There's a problem. A big one. I sat down slowly. What kind of problem? Sir, structural damage, cracks in the foundation. A neighbor noticed something off, and when inspectors came this morning, they said part of the house is at risk of collapse. I blinked. But the inspection before the sale. Missed it, apparently he cut in. Or maybe it's gotten worse. I don't know. But now they're saying we'll have to move out if it isn't repaired. It could cost hundreds of thousands, Mom. I closed my eyes. I already knew the answer to the next question, but I asked anyway. What about the insurance? He hesitated. Basic doesn't cover structural damage. If we had full coverage like you said, maybe, but we don't. And now we're stuck. I stayed quiet. Please, he said. We don't have the money. We can't sell it. We can't fix it. You're the only one who can help us. I thought of Brittany's voice in that kitchen. We don't need a burden like her anymore. I thought of Lily's face when she showed me her telescope. And then I thought of every time I'd bent over backwards to make Ryan's life easier only to be left standing alone. I can't help you, Ryan, I said quietly. What? He choked. What do you mean you can't? I spent nearly all my savings on that house. What's left is what I need to live on. He was silent for a beat. Then his voice changed, pleading, desperate. Mom, we'll be on the street. No, I said calmly, you still have your old house. But we can't go back there, not after living here. That's your pride talking, I replied. I already gave you a gift most parents never could. And all I got in return was silence, mockery, and exclusion. So, this is punishment, he snapped. No, I said, this is a boundary. He didn't respond. I hung up the phone and let the silence return. Only this time it didn't feel quite so lonely. It felt like peace. The next day, Brittany showed up at my apartment. She didn't call first. She just knocked sharp, urgent, like someone used to being let in. When I opened the door, she was standing there in her designer coat, eyes slightly red but makeup still perfect. Can I come in? She asked. I stepped aside. Sure. She walked into the living room like she didn't remember calling me a burden in that very space just weeks ago. Her eyes scanned the room, pausing at the family photo on the shelf. We need to talk about the house. I nodded. I assumed. There's more damage than we thought, she said. The foundation's shifting, and if it rains again this week, the inspector said it could become unsafe to live in. I'm sorry to hear that, I said simply. We need help, Joanne. She sat down, hands clasped tightly. Look, I said some awful things. I was stressed. I was wrong. I'm ashamed. Because you need my help now? I asked. She looked up, startled. No, because I am. I didn't respond. I just watched her. We've been talking about it, she continued. Ryan and me. We're willing to have you move in with us. Into the old house. You can sell this place. Use the money for the repairs. I tilted my head slightly. A week ago I was an intrusion. Now I'm a solution. It's not like that. It's exactly like that, Brittany. My voice stayed calm, and I'm not doing it. I gave everything I could already. She stood quickly, her tone shifting. You're going to regret this. Lily's going to suffer because of your pride. I rose too, but slower. No, she'll be okay. She knows who loves her. She stared at me, speechless. Then she left, letting the door close a little too hard behind her. This time I didn't flinch. 3 days later, Ryan called. His voice was quieter this time. No urgency, no demands. Mom, he said, I just wanted to talk. No asking, no pressure. I didn't respond right away, and he waited. We're moving back into the old house, he continued. We don't have a choice. The damage is worse than they thought, and the bank's threatening foreclosure. We found a buyer, some development firm, but they're only offering a fraction of what the house was worth. I'm sorry, I said, and I meant it. That must be hard. It is, he replied, but that's not why I called. He paused, like he was sorting through his words. I need to apologize, Mom, not because I need something, not because Brittany told me to, just because I've been thinking, a lot. I stayed silent. I was raised by someone who gave up everything for me, he said, and I repaid that with entitlement and disrespect. I let Brittany talk to you that way. I laughed behind your back. And worst of all, I stayed silent when you needed me to speak up. There was a tightness in my chest I hadn't felt in years. We're going to counseling, he said, Brittany and me, trying to fix what we can. But I needed to say this now, even if nothing changes between us. I finally found my voice. I appreciate that, Ryan. I do. I don't expect you to forgive me right away, he added. I want to be a better man. For Lily, for myself, and maybe someday for you too. I breathed in deeply. That's a start. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something I hadn't felt toward my son in years. Hope. Summer came quietly, warm and full of light. Walter Kind, patient Walter, invited me to spend the season with him at his nephew's beach house on the Florida coast. Just a few months, he said. A change of scenery, fresh air, no pressure. He even brought flowers when he asked, a small bouquet of wild lilies wrapped in brown paper. I said yes. For the first time in my life, I was doing something for me. No guilt, no compromise. Just joy. Lily was thrilled. You deserve this, Grandma, she said. Promise you'll send me photos every day. I will, I laughed. And I expect Sunday video calls. The morning of my departure, she came to the station with Walter and my dear friend Elaine. To my surprise, Ryan came too. He stood a few feet back, watching, hesitant but present. When I hugged Lily goodbye, she whispered, I'm proud of you. Elaine winked as she handed me a small care package, ginger cookies, and a paperback novel. For your mornings by the ocean. And then Ryan stepped forward. Mom, he said, eyes steady, I hope you find happiness out there. You deserve it. Thank you, I replied. He opened his mouth to say something else, but stopped. Instead, he nodded. As the train began to pull away, I looked out the window. Lily was waving, Elaine smiling, and Ryan standing still, hands in his pockets, watching me leave. Beside me, Walter leaned back in his seat. Ready for adventure? I smiled. I think I already started it. The past would always be part of me, but it would no longer define me. I was no longer just someone's mother or someone's sacrifice. I was Joanne Fletcher, a woman reclaiming her worth, one quiet boundary at a time. And at 75, that was only the beginning. My name is Margaret Allen, and if I had known that one cup of coffee could shatter 68 years of dignity, I would have stayed in bed that morning. It was supposed to be a quiet breakfast. I was sitting at the kitchen table in my daughter Chloe's house, sunlight pouring through the windows like it always did. The coffee was hot too strong, the way her husband liked it, but I didn't complain. I cradled the mug gently, wearing my old flannel pajamas. My hip still ached from surgery, but I was learning to move again, learning to trust my body one step at a time. "Grandma," Logan said casually, spooning cereal into his mouth like he was asking for the remote. "Can I borrow your credit card again? It's for my gaming chair. Only $5,000. I didn't even look up. I just said, calmly, no. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was loaded. Chloe didn't scream. Not right away. She just stood up slowly, walked over to me, and without a word, tipped my coffee mug into my lap. The heat was instant. I gasped and stood up, the mug slipping from my hands and crashing to the floor. The liquid soaked through my pajama pants, burning my thighs. I looked at her, at my daughter, and I didn't see regret. I saw calculation. "If you're going to be selfish," she said coldly, folding her arms, "then maybe it's time you leave. Either give Logan what he needs or find somewhere else to live. We're not running a charity, Mom." Charity. That word hit harder than the coffee. I stood there wet and burning, and suddenly I wasn't in my daughter's house anymore. I was in a place where I didn't belong. A place where I wasn't wanted. Chloe's face didn't flinch. Logan didn't look up. I reached for a napkin, hand shaking, and dabbed at my legs. No one moved to help me. That was the moment I realized I wasn't family anymore. I was a burden. I said nothing. I walked to the sink, rinsed my hands, and turned off the tap. "Then," I said quietly, "I'll be gone before sunset." I closed the guest room door behind me and leaned against it for a long moment. The sting from the coffee was fading, but something colder was settling in. A deeper burn. The kind that seeps into your chest when you finally understand you were never welcome, you were tolerated. Just until your usefulness ran dry. The room smelled like lavender detergent and wood polish, like something preserved instead of lived in. This was the same room I'd recovered in after my hip replacement, the one Chloe had insisted I use. She called it a temporary arrangement, said I shouldn't be alone, that it was safer for me here. I had believed her. Gratefully, stupidly, I believed her. I sat on the edge of the bed, legs trembling, not from age but from the realization that I had mistaken control for care. Chloe had managed everything, my prescriptions, groceries, phone calls, even my mail. She told me it was easier if she handled the bills. That way I could rest. She never said no when I offered to help pay for something. But now I saw it clearly, helping had always come with strings. No, with ropes. Invisible at first, then tight, then cutting off circulation. I wasn't being cared for. I was being collected. I moved slowly toward the closet and reached up for my suitcase. It was still there, dusty but intact, like some part of me knew I'd need it one day. I braced against the dresser to keep from falling, my hip protesting every movement. I didn't cry. I didn't groan. Pain I could live with. It was the betrayal that knocked the breath out of me. No one came to check on me. No knock at the door. No footsteps in the hallway. Chloe had screamed at me loud enough for the neighbors to hear, but not even Logan peeked in. I was alone. And I'd never felt the weight of that word more than I did right then. I opened the top drawer of the nightstand and pulled out an envelope I had tucked away months ago. Inside were copies of my ID, my Medicare card, a printout of my bank account information. I didn't know why I had saved them back then. Maybe I was afraid something like this would happen. Or maybe, deep down, I always knew it would. I sat back down on the bed and stared at the envelope. That thin paper held the last shreds of my independence. Chloe thought I had forgotten who I was. She thought she could wrap her control in the language of love, and I'd never notice. But I noticed now. And once you notice, you can't go back. I wasn't weak. I wasn't old. I was angry and awake. and that, I knew, was more dangerous to her than anything I could say. I reached for my purse, half out of habit, half out of instinct. It felt lighter than usual. I unzipped the front pocket, empty. No wallet, no ID, no bank card. Panic bloomed in my chest like a sudden frost. I opened the side pocket, then the back. Nothing. Just loose tissues, an old lipstick, a few mints. No wallet, no trace of it. I had it yesterday. I remembered at the pharmacy. Chloe had driven me. I paid for my prescription ointment. She insisted on holding my bag while I walked slowly to the register. I had thought she was being kind. Now, I wasn't so sure. I could still hear her voice from months ago. Let me take care of your bills, Mom. It's easier this way. One account, everything automatic. You don't need to stress. Just focus on healing. So I let her. I handed over my passwords, my trust, my access. Now, I couldn't even remember the last time I saw a bank statement with my name on it. The realization sank like a stone. I didn't just hand her the key. I let her lock the door behind me. I stood and walked to the dresser, pulled open the second drawer. There, under a stack of folded scarves, was the small notebook I used to jot down grocery lists, birthdays, recipes. On the last page, I had scribbled my bank account numbers just in case. I stared at those numbers. They were familiar, still mine, but I hadn't seen the debit card that matched them in weeks. Maybe months? I checked my jewelry box, the space under the mattress, even the inside flap of my old Bible. Nothing. They didn't just ask for my help, they took it. I sat back down on the bed, dizzy, not from the coffee or the stress. From the cold, hard knowing that I had been erased one paperless bill at a time. Chloe had streamlined me right out of my own life. She had intercepted calls from my bank, told neighbors I was too tired to come out when I hadn't even known they came by, controlled my Amazon orders like I was a child who couldn't be trusted with her own money. I thought she was helping, but she was managing. I looked over at the framed photo on the nightstand, me and Chloe smiling at her college graduation. I looked proud in that picture. Back then I believed love was enough, but some daughters don't grow up to love you. They grow up to use you. My phone was still on the nightstand. I picked it up and scrolled to a name I hadn't dialed in a long time. Frank Delaney. Retired attorney. My neighbor for 12 years before I moved in with Chloe. Once a friend. Still kind. I hit call. He answered on the second ring. Margaret, he said, his voice warm, steady. Is everything all right? No, I replied, voice calm but clear. But it will be. Frank arrived within the hour. He didn't knock twice, just once, firmly, then waited. I opened the door, suitcase already packed, envelope clutched in one hand. He looked at me, really looked, and didn't say a word about the burn on my pants or the tightness around my eyes. He just took the suitcase from my hand and said, "Let's go." I didn't look back. The drive was quiet. We passed the park where I used to take Chloe when she was Logan's age. The corner bakery I hadn't visited in over a year. Each street felt like a memory sealed behind glass. I kept expecting my phone to ring. It didn't. Frank pulled into a driveway flanked by tall pines and a modest wooden sign, Willow Haven, Independent Senior Living. It didn't look like a facility. It looked like a quiet village hidden inside a garden. Sunlight flickered through tree branches. A koi pond shimmered beyond the courtyard. There was even a bench under a willow tree, where two women were sipping tea. "This is the place you once told me about," Frank said, turning off the engine. "You like the koi pond." I nodded, unable to speak. Inside, the lobby smelled like lemon balm and fresh bread, not bleach. The receptionist greeted me with a warm smile and a clipboard, not a form to sign away my rights. "I called ahead," Frank said. "She's just visiting today." I almost corrected him. Visiting sounded permanent, but something inside me whispered, "Let it be." We toured the property. A small library, a craft room, even a yoga class with music so soft it felt like water. No one hovered. No one asked what I needed. I walked beside Frank at my own pace. No tugging, no managing, just quiet company. When we reached the koi pond, I stopped. The fish moved slowly beneath the surface, unbothered, like they had nowhere urgent to be. "I used to sit by water like this," I said softly. "Before all of this." "You still do," Frank replied. We sat in silence. For the first time in months, I felt like I existed not as a task or an expense, but as a person. Back inside, the receptionist brought us to a tea room and placed a brochure between 2 cups of chamomile. I picked it up with careful hands. Studio apartment, kitchenette, balcony, month to month. No pressure, move-in ready. Chloe had told me it was impossible. That places like this were for rich retirees, not people like me. She lied. I traced the page slowly, reading every line. It's not cheap, I whispered, but not impossible. Frank nodded. Not if we protect what's still yours. He pulled a folder from his bag. First, we file a financial protection order. Then, we document everything, the missing card, the account transfers, the house deed. I looked at him, startled. The deed? He raised an eyebrow. You still have it, don't you? Yes, I never signed full ownership over, just temporary access for hospital forms. Then that house is still yours, he said. Let's make sure it stays that way. I closed the brochure and let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't reacting. I was reclaiming. And it felt like breathing again. That evening, back in Frank's kitchen, we spread out everything I had. Insurance cards, old bank statements, photocopies of my ID. A folder Chloe once called her one's clutter when she tried to convince me to go fully paperless. I even brought my yellow notepad, thin, frayed, stained with time, where I had scribbled every such charge I could remember. Frank flipped through it slowly, nodding. Recurring PayPal withdrawals at 3 a.m., he said. Charges from stores you don't shop at. Netflix profiles you've never used. This is more than mismanagement. I sat across from him, hands folded, back straight. I didn't feel like a helpless old woman anymore. I felt prepared. I don't have the debit card, I said, but I remember everything. Good, Frank said. Memory counts more than a card, especially when the trail's still fresh. He opened a second folder. This is the real power, he said. The deed to your house. You told me you never signed full ownership over. I didn't, I confirmed. Chloe said it was temporary, for hospital paperwork. Frank leaned back, shaking his head. She assumed you wouldn't remember, or wouldn't care, but you do. I nodded. She's living in that house like she owns it, I said quietly. But she doesn't, Frank replied, and now we make sure the law knows that too. The next day, he connected me with a discreet real estate agent named Claire. Kind. Professional. Didn't ask questions. She scheduled a reassessment of the property and prepared it for potential listing. Nothing final, just the first steps. 2 mornings later, Chloe pulled into the driveway and found Claire in the front yard, clipboard in hand. I wasn't there to see it. I was at Willow Haven, sitting on the shaded balcony with a cup of tea and a reassessment form Frank had brought that morning. But Chloe called me. 3 times. I let them all go to voicemail. The 4th time, I picked up. What the hell is going on? She demanded. There's a realtor at my house. Your house. Whatever. She says you ordered an evaluation. I waited a beat before answering. Correct. Silence. And then venom? You're not serious. I'm very serious. You don't even live here anymore? What is this? A guilt trip? You trying to embarrass me? No, I said, calm as stone. I'm just reclaiming what's mine. She laughed bitterly. This is my home. No, I replied, my voice steady. It's the home you've been squatting in, funded with money that was never yours. I let you manage it, that permission is revoked. You can't throw us out. I let the silence sit for a moment. I didn't throw you out, Chloe. You told me to leave. That stopped her. I could almost hear the moment her breath caught. She'd forgotten I remember. Forgotten I was the legal owner. Forgotten I never gave her full power of attorney. Forgotten the quiet can be more powerful than noise. She finally whispered, "You're being cruel." But I didn't argue. I didn't explain. I said one sentence that ended the conversation. You only miss me now that I said no. Then I ended the call. Later that day, Claire texted me, evaluation complete. Strong resale potential. Chloe attempted to interfere, but I remained professional. Frank called too. She's furious, he said. Left me a voicemail full of threats. Let her threaten, I replied, watching the koi drift beneath the water outside my new window. I'm not afraid of her anger. Because this time I wasn't angry either. I was something far more powerful. Certain. The letter came 3 days later. A thick ivory envelope, hand-addressed, no return address, just my name, in Chloe's perfect cursive. The kind of handwriting that always tried too hard to be elegant. I didn't open it right away. I left it on the table in the common room at Willow Haven, next to my chamomile tea. I stared at it like it might grow teeth. Marjorie, one of the ladies from Bridge Club, walked by and saw me frozen in place. "From her?" she asked gently. I nodded. "I want me to open it for you." "No," I said, calm. "I don't need anyone else to read this lie." I carried it upstairs, set it on the small writing desk Frank had helped me move in, and waited until the afternoon light hit the window just right. The same soft glow that used to fall across my late husband Cliff's shoulders when he worked on our taxes. Then I opened it. The first word was Mom. Not dear Mom. Not I'm sorry, just Mom, like she still had the right to use it. The first paragraph was what I expected: vague regret, flimsy sentences about how things got out of hand, and she never meant for me to feel pushed aside. Then came the real reason for the letter. Line 3, we're having a hard time now. Bills piling up. Logan didn't get the loan after all. There it was, the ask. It always came. The apology was bait. The money was the hook. At the bottom of the envelope was a folded check drawn from a joint account I didn't remember authorizing. It bore my printed name, but I hadn't signed it. $3,500. Memo, car repairs. Torn slightly at the corner. Uncashed. She must have kept it. Or forged it. Maybe both. It wasn't an olive branch. It was bait dangled with a shaky signature and a fake tear. I folded the check. Then again. Until it disappeared into my palm like every broken promise she'd ever made. I dropped it straight into the shredder at the Willow Haven front desk. No speech. No anger. Just paper, turning into dust. I left the rest of the letter unfolded on my desk like a carcass, a reminder that not every apology deserves a response. When Frank stopped by later that day with lemon muffins, he saw the letter and raised an eyebrow. "She tried again?" he asked. I handed him the remaining half. He read it in silence, then looked up. "She still thinks you're a mark." "Not anymore," I said. That night, I didn't write in my journal. I didn't need to. The sentence was already written in my mind: I don't care what you meant. What you did was enough. And that was the difference between before and now. Before, I would have explained, justified, softened the blow. Now, I let the silence carry it. And silence, when chosen not forced, is its own kind of strength. They showed up on a Tuesday. I was sitting in the garden at Willow Haven, beside Marjorie, our hands resting on a folded quilt between us. We had just finished our usual debate about the bridge tournament schedule and how none of the new ladies shuffled their cards properly. That's when I saw them. Chloe and Logan walking up the brick path toward the front entrance. Chloe's stride was sharp, full of purpose, too fast, too tight. Logan trailed behind her, hoodie up, hands shoved in his pockets, shoulders slumped in that signature slouch of entitlement. My stomach turned before I even remembered the $5,000 coffee incident. They were coming for a showdown. But I had nothing left to lose. The security guard spotted them first. Doris, sharp as ever, kind but unshakable, stepped from behind the reception desk before they could reach the door. Chloe said something, gesturing past Doris, pointing toward the back garden. Doris didn't flinch. She spoke calmly, clearly, professionally. I didn't move. I didn't hide. I didn't even flinch. Marjorie stiffened beside me. "Should I call Frank?" "No," I said. "Let her see me calm." Chloe finally spotted me through the glass. She pushed toward the door. Doris stepped in. I couldn't hear the words, but I recognized the shape of them. Rage, desperation. That strangled voice people use when their control is slipping through their fingers. Logan noticed me next. His eyes met mine. For a second, I saw something. Not guilt. Not love. But panic. Not because he missed me. Because the money was gone. And I wasn't coming back.
Doris raised her hand and pointed firmly toward the parking lot. Chloe threw up her arms. Logan muttered something and turned, walking away first. Good. Let the boy lead for once. Chloe stood still for a moment longer, arms stiff at her sides, her face pale with fury. Her lips moved, and though I couldn't hear, I knew the words she mouthed. Mom. But I didn't rise. I didn't wave. I didn't give her anything. I sat there, steady, wrapped in the same quilt Cliff used to pull over my shoulders when I fell asleep during Jeopardy rare runs. They left. I watched until the shadows of their car disappeared from the driveway. Marjorie let out a breath. You didn't even blink, she said. I smiled. I already said goodbye, I whispered. They're just now hearing it. Later that day, Frank came by with a bag of cranberry scones and a fresh file folder. They'll try again, he said, sitting beside me on the bench. I know, I replied, but I won't, because the battle was never about shouting louder. It was about standing still when they expected you to fall apart and letting them walk away alone. 2 days later, another envelope arrived. This one was smaller, handwritten, no return address, slipped under my door sometime during breakfast. Chloe, again. I didn't hesitate. I didn't even open it. I tore it in half, then in half again, and dropped it straight into the shredder at the front desk. Because this time I wasn't curious. This time I didn't need to hear her say, I'm sorry, only to follow it with, but I need. This time I trusted the silence more than her words. Later that afternoon, Frank came by with updates to the trust, a few adjustments, protected accounts, emergency contacts. He spread the papers out neatly and handed me a pen. You know, he said, watching me sign the final page, you've done something a lot of people never get to do. What's that? You ended the cycle, not with a scream, not with revenge, but with a locked door and a clear name. I leaned back in my chair and let that settle. For the first time since Cliff died, I believed I had come home to myself. It happened on a Thursday, just after lunch. The halls of Willow Haven were quiet. The garden glowed gold beneath the sun. I sat on my favorite bench beside the koi pond, a book resting in my lap, unread. I wasn't hiding anymore. I was resting, living, breathing. A few feet away, Marjorie was folding a quilt. Doris waved from the entrance. Frank was due with peach cobbler later that evening. Peace had a rhythm. Not fast, not loud, but steady, earned. And then the final call came. The bank, the trust specialist, the official notification Chloe and Logan were under investigation for financial misconduct, elder exploitation, and forgery. I didn't feel victory. I felt space, room to breathe. Because they hadn't just lost money. They had lost access to my name, my voice, my life. They gambled on my silence. And lost. That night, I lit a single candle beside my bed, not for them, for me. Because survival is quiet. But freedom? Freedom is steady. And now, every time I open my window, I don't check who might be watching. I don't brace for footsteps. I just listen to the breeze, the birds, the rustle of ivy outside my balcony. It sounds like home. It sounds like a second chance. And if you're watching this, holding your own story in your chest like a stone, know this. You don't owe your silence to anyone who calls their control care. You can leave. You can start over. You can draw a line and walk past it. And when they come pounding on the door, you've finally locked behind you. You don't have to answer. You just have to stay free. If this story meant something to you, take a second to share or leave a comment. Someone out there might need to hear it too. And maybe, just maybe, it's their turn to pick up the pen and write their own ending.